anything. Hello, Alberto. Sawadika Kunnapadam. Can you hear me? I can't hear you.
I can hear you.
I
can hear you.
Yeah, okay. Sawadika Ajan.
ค่ะสวัสดีค่ะ Can you hear
ครับ
me?
อาจารย์ครับ
I can hear you, yes. Yes.
สวัสดีครับท่านอาจารย์สวัสดีครับ
ค่ะสวัสดีค่ะ เสียงเบามากเลยคุณเอฟ
สวัสดีครับ everybody
How are you คุณโจนาธานและคุณซาร่า
Yes we are well thanks อาจารย์
Shall we start?
Just at the end of the discussion last Monday, Alberto had asked a detailed questioning. I'm mentioning it because he's here. And you made some very good points that we can think about all kinds of details that we've read in the text. But if there's no understanding of the thinking as just thinking, then it's quite useless and it's postponing the understanding for what seems very important because we think it's in the teachings, but actually the understanding has to be right now to let go of the idea of self. And you mentioned there has to be just the letting go of other ideas, even the words of the Buddha, because actually it's just about now. Otherwise we follow all the details or try to find all the answers in the book, and it seems very important, but actually it's I trying to know, trying to find out. So all day long there's forgetting about the understanding right now at this moment. So I don't know if either you or Alberto or anyone would like to comment further.
This is the understanding of the subtlety of Dhammas right now, because we always say Dhamma is so subtle, but where is the subtlety and what is subtle if it's not now? Because we have heard about reality, and how can we find it other way or other place or other time? Because it's now not known as it is only a reality appearing one by that which arises to experience it, uncontrollable. all by conditions. That's why each word of the teaching should apply to this very moment. The truth of it is that if it's not known, it's only remembering about the story about it. For example, when we talk about the pointlessness, see, what about it said in Tipitaka on by the Buddha, always forgotten that that is nivarana, hindrance, a hindrance. Tinamita is there. We remember the five nivarana, but when it's there, unknown. That's why the most important thing is to understand and remember very firmly that actually there is nothing if nothing arises at all. And so what arises is by condition, and it cannot be taken for anything as it appears, because the succession of the arising and falling away is so very rapidly. And this is the subtlety of all dhammas now, that it can be listened, considering, until there is the understanding. But it would be firmer and firmer when there is more understanding of the teachings of the Buddha about what is there now, as it really is, a reality which can experience. If there is no such reality, nothing can appear at all. So it's so very important that which now arises and is achieved of experiencing an object only one at a time. But even so, the subtlety of it is more subtle than that, because Buddha pointed out each moment which cannot be known at all, like Sampatichana, Santirana, Panchatvara Vachana. No idea at all if Buddha didn't teach about it. To understand the way it is, no one is there at all from birth, and there must be conditions for everything. When it arises, it cannot arise by itself, but it's conditioned to arise by many conditions too. That's why when anyone talk about Nibbana, it seems like it's something very desirable. But what is it? This moment, if there's no understanding of what is there, what is the point of thinking about Nibbana? Because it is the way to letting go ignorance, attachment, and the idea of self and other akusala until there's no more. Thinking of how much ignorance is there now and how much can it be gradually wearing away little by little. Without understanding, it's impossible to think about what Buddha taught about Nibbana as a reality, because it's not there now. That's why understanding that is the way to eradicate defilements, ignorance, and attachment, and other unwholesome reality, absolutely gone, eradicated, never arise again. So it's the end of akusala until it's the end of our wholesome, conditioned reality. So it has to be truthful to the truth that is there. It can be known depending on how much interest in is there as the factor of the past, leading to the way to eradicate that which is very firm, accumulated, very strong. It has condition for arising any moment. That's why the understanding of the teaching must be so very carefully studied, and remember each word. No one. Now we're talking about the truth of what is there, to have confidence, saddha, of that which is not taken for anything, because it's not there anymore. As soon as it has arisen, it falls away instantly. So, and this is the word of the enlightened one, or anyone who has come to enlighten the truth of what is there now. That's why just be truthful. How much kilesa, how much ignorance, how much clinging to that which now is appearing, and not enough understanding to let go the idea of something. So even one has heard about visible object is experienced by the seeing. Remember that. That which is visible now is experienced by a reality that it's true, it's there, it's real, as the experience different from that, but it arises to experience that. That's why to let go the clinging to the result is the most important, because as long as there is the idea of self, excuse me, as long as there is the idea of self, it cannot let go. What is there of something? Even it's so very little, what is it? It's something to think about because of not understanding the truth. That's why there should be, and it has to be, very careful understanding of each word of the Buddha. And by then, it's the understanding of the subtlety of reality, no matter what, because now it appears, but not as it is. And the word of the teaching just talk about each one to be known. Just develop the understanding, and understanding works its way, very, very subtle. And this is the path, so subtle, because it's so natural, because all are conditioned. So remember the truth that actually there's no me and no I and no expectation. What would happen in life, it's there. And right understanding from hearing the truth can lead to understand the moment of that, to be patient to the harsh word or to whatever fame or what, because it just only a reality, no one there. That's why to have firm understanding of the word of the teaching covers everything. All dhammas are anatta. Will lead to understand what is there, not by intention, but from the word is heard and considered carefully of each, not to be heedless, that it's just a word, but it's now at this moment. That's why before it can lead to the understanding of the teaching is about what is there now, which hasn't been known before. And there can be moment of understanding, firmer and firmer, until it can condition, moment of direct understanding. So at that moment, it's not as usual, which is just thinking or talking about it, but it's that just very normal, attend and then aware of that little by little, not hurry. And at that moment, any reality can be object, but depending on understanding or not, it can be doubt, it can be clinging, it can be anything. That's why it's so very subtle to understand all dhammas in life, natural life, normal life, that what are there are all dhammas, but is anyone known by right understanding at moment when it's there? That's why only the understanding can let go all clinging and ignorance of what is there. That's why no matter we have learned about any word like nivarana, tinamita, when it's there, it's not known because it hinders understanding. When the understanding is not firm enough, how can it understand that very moment that we have heard it is tinamita, nivarana, and so on? That's why just develop the understanding of what we are hearing now, just to be conditioned to understand the truth of what is there. By then, there can be the understanding more about the subtlety of reality right now. So the understanding has to let go what we take for I, the rupa, my body, and Vedana, and Sanya, and our Sankara Dhamma, Khanda, and Vijnana Khanda, all there. So how long will right understanding develops carefully, wisely, until it can let go what is taken for I, no matter what, at moment of understanding it, no selection, what would be the object? Nobody can expect unexpectedly all the time. And it is not as the same of what is there now at all. Just one reality in samsara, unexpectedly. The accumulation of lots of conditions to condition, a surprising object can be known as it is, as a self. That is a test of understanding of no matter what is there, as whether it's as it is, no thing in it, no one in it. So now we talk about reality in order to have confidence to let go, little by little, ignorance, attachment, and all wholesome until wholesome, no more conditions for anything to arise. And that is the end of akusala, stage by stage. So what is that? Is it possible? What is it? The end of a reality which cannot arise again, like wrong understanding, wrong view of wrong idea of what is there as something. No doubt about what is meant by Nibbana. It has to be stage by stage. For example, there can be understanding of that which is the object. But what about the understanding itself? It's not I, it's not mine, it's gone, it does not belong to anyone. It's the way to let go ignorance all the way. Otherwise, ignorance is there with subtle attachment, which can be known only by right understanding when it's there. Otherwise, it's not letting go the idea of self from that which one takes for I, from birth to any moment, even right now, when Panya is not there. Little by little, just to let go. But when there's not Panya, when it's not Panya, it does not letting go. It just want to understand this, to do that, to think about this and that, on and on, unknown. That's why the value, the precious of the words of the teaching about the truth, so great. Without the understanding of the subtlety of reality, it's impossible to let go the idea of self. From the very beginning, the point of listening to the truth, just to understand, and understand leads its way to understand better and better and better, deeper and deeper and deeper.
Sawadika Tanachan. A moment ago, you said be patient to the harsh word, but that can also apply to the happy words that come in a situation where it's very joyful. If there's any awareness, then it's the same. Be patient towards the happy word as well as the harsh word. Would that be true?
For everything, to everything, anytime. Otherwise, how can there be the understanding of the difference between kusala and akusala? That's why not just when the object is unpleasant, what about the object which is so pleasant too? So passion must be there, great enough to understand the truth as parami. Without it, it's impossible to understand the truth of what is there, because ignorance is there, attachment or aversion is there, and those cannot understand anything as it is. It's a long way to go, as long way that it has been accumulated.
And these realities arise really unexpectedly. I was thinking just maybe it was yesterday, I was with one of my granddaughters and we were washing my car, and then it was quite fun, and then suddenly she tipped really dirty water on me, and I suddenly just got really angry and whacked her on the arm.
Yeah.
I was quite surprised, but I mean, that's what we talk about all the time. Realities arise. And I was thinking about when we're looking at something, yes, the realities are arising. Those sense, the visible object arises and falls really quickly. The seeing arises and falls much quicker. But it seems like it stays, it doesn't suddenly change into something else. But in fact, it does. If there's a loud noise, then there's this distraction. You're not looking, there's hearing. So even though I've heard this so many times, it's still a little confusing in a way. It's, well, not confusing, no, it's surprising, the reaction sometimes I have, like I mentioned that about the granddaughter. And the look on her face was, it really made me feel bad. But anyway, it happened. So yes, realities arising and falling really quickly.
And
You felt bad for a short moment.
I did. Then I justified it by saying, well, she shouldn't have put dirty water on me. Yeah. Achan, you go on, Achan, please.
Those moments be realized as not so when time comes. Otherwise, it's there. And the story of the event is there.
Yes. Yes, Achan.
So understanding understands how much clinging to everything there as something. My niece, my car. Is it a moment of touching, hardness and
You're
softness?
giving the example of Tina Mida, Ajahn, and how people may read about the Nivaranas, about Tina Mida. And if there's no understanding, it instead of helping, it just hinders the understanding because it's taken for my Tina Mida or my laziness or something to be known but isn't appearing. And if we consider wisely about these mental factors, and we know that they arise with sasankarika citas, so they're just dhammas that arise with certain kinds of lobha and certain kind of dosa, and which are weaker and no effort for kusala at those moments, and then gone. Anything more to say? Can't hear you, Jan.
About that, because all can be known, but not at that very moment. Only when Panya is developed high enough.
Are you speaking, Jan?
Yeah, I can hear him.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Ajahn. Please continue.
Because all we're talking about can be understood, can be realized when it's there, where Panya is strong enough. That's why the story of washing the car, my niece, her face, and on, can be the object of understanding, but not at that very moment. So the other moment, the new reality, not the old one, comes back to be object anymore. That's why develop the understanding of what we heard from the teachings. Even we don't talk about it or think about it, but it's there, developed, so that it can understand what is there at any time. As it is, the most important thing is understanding the different stages of understanding. At that very moment, not enough condition to understand what is there. And when there is the understanding, it's not the story at all, because it is only the characteristic of whatever is there in life, even right now, or next, on and on and on, no matter what, not the same one, all gone. That's why let not mind about the past and the future which has come yet and which has gone, because what is there now? The accumulation of right understanding, whether it's ready to be conditioned to understand or not. Only that. And this is the way to let go the idea of trying or thinking about it. Because whatever is there, when it's not known as a reality directly, as we use the word satipatthana or right awareness, sammasati, it is not the moment of beginning to know, to be acquainted with that which is there almost all the time in a day, in a year, in one's life. It's all there, but right understanding is not enough to directly understand it with direct awareness. So it now is the conditions for the developing of understanding, to understand what is there directly. That's why it's always reminded, even in Tipitaka, about what is there right then, not thinking about the past and the future, including the moment when it's conditioned to understand, but without hearing, considering at all. What can be conditioned to understand what is there as it is? That's why the prayati is very important too. But the point is to understand the subtlety of the accumulation of right understanding, to let go all the time. At moment of understanding, who knows? No one can let go. But right understanding itself, letting go. Wrong understanding or attachment to that as something. That's why after hearing, the accumulation of akusala is there again, to condition not the moment of understanding what is there. That's why it's so very long way, and it's very subtle to understand that if it's not this way, it's impossible to let go the very subtle attachment to what is there with ignorance and wrong understanding, until wrong understanding is completely, absolutely eradicated. That's why the only way to eradicate the wrong understanding, the wrong idea of self, is that what is there now, just hearing about the truth, is that which is experienced. Only this has to be more considering about the truth. For example, can seeing see many things as now, or only at moment when it sees? What it sees is so very short, very fast, and then gone. That is the truth of seeing, the truth of seeing. And it can be known when Panya is strong enough, at level of vipassana jnana, by then how can everything appears as usual? That is not the seeing, only the characteristic which arises to experience only that which impinged on the ibis. But it's not the moment of thinking, but moment of understanding the truth of it. That's right. Understanding develops on and on and on to let go on and on and on until it can understand different realities as we are talking about, like Tina Mita. See, even is there. Right understanding can understand it. It's only a characteristic which is not static, which is not known, which is not aware of before at all. That's right. This is the development of right understanding, letting go little by little. If it's not letting go, it means that right understanding is not right enough to understand the nature of that, which is a reality only. And the point is to understand the subtlety of reality. Otherwise, the ignorance and the idea of I is always there, unknown, so subtle. This is the way to understand what Buddha meant, what he meant about the subtlety of all dhammas after his enlightenment. He said, all dhammas are so rich, subtle, very deep, but it can be understood. It can be directly known when there's more understanding and more letting go. If there is no understanding of the subtlety of the teachings, it's impossible to let go because the considering of the truth is not enough. It needs more and more and more and more. The first thing is to understand the characteristic, the nature of that which arises now and see, now hears, now think, as a reality which experience an object by conditions too. So we can talk about anything, the moment of pointlessness. It's real, it's there, it's not me, it hinders. And the moment when washing the car and what happens, all adamas, just one at a time, but they appear as I see my niece, see, suddenly, instantly. But how many realities arising and falling away before it can be a story or just a reality like a thing, like flower, shoes, pencil, so on. This is the subtlety of the enlightenment of the Buddha. Otherwise, the subtlety of all dhammas cannot appear, cannot be realized. But not by self or ignorance, but by understanding. No one to let go from the very beginning. We are talking about realities now too. It can be known anytime at moment of hearing the truth about it. For example, seeing right now, hearing the truth about seeing is time for understanding to develop to understand directly of seeing. And this is the meaning of each word of the Buddha. Never change because the truth cannot be changed. The most important thing is to understand the truth as no one and no thing. And that is the absolute truth. That's why it takes time to consider again and again and again about just one reality or one word, because it's now unknown until it's known. As long as life is so natural, not by trying to know it, going somewhere, doing something, it's impossible, because that is not any understanding of what is there. But as simple as now, as normal, as usual, daily life, depending on condition, after hearing and considering, right understanding develop to the moment when understanding that which now appears as nothing, no thing, no one. And that is Viriya, and that is Kanti, and that is Satya, and that is Nekama, and that's Atidana, see, all there. Not self at all. Each moment which has gone is there, accumulated to condition what would be next, next, and next, and next. Never be the same.
With regard to the Viri and Kanti, we were discussing how last week that when there isn't the Kusala Virya and Kanti, when there's laziness, everything seems more important than understanding, like the incident in the car or the story of the pointlessness or working out the meaning, or everything seems more important because there isn't the Virya and Kanti to support the understanding at this moment. And we talk a lot about the patience to develop understanding. And before we used to refer to the effort, the virya, but now usually you just mention about patience. And is it appropriate to even refer to virya as effort, or just to patience and courage? Or it just depends on the understanding? Sorry, I missed that.
But what is the Cetasika is there when we use the word Viriya and Kanti?
Well, virya cetasika. So of course it can be kusala or akusala, depending. So if we're talking about the virya and kanti that develop with understanding, of course it's referring to the kusala virya.
That's why Buddha said that Viriya arises with how many Cetasika, see?
Right. It arises with all chittas except for 16 of the ahetuka chittas. So it's there at almost every moment in the day, whenever the ahetuka chittas are not arising. So with all kusala chittas or akusala chittas, and with kusala vipaka chittas also.
So it's not known as it is not self, it is only Viriya, right? Even right now, just stretch out your hand to pick something.
There.
Viriya is there already.
Yes.
That is not Kanti, right?
Right.
So when it's more than that, when it faced with hard time or something like that, it can be known when there is the understanding of a reality at that very moment, to abstain from such and such clinging or aversion and so on, or harsh word or fame or whatever. See, so it's not just learn about the word, because they are there in life, different levels. So it is known by many words as Viriya or Kanti and so on, and attachment with many words according to the different aspects and different degrees. That's why we learn about how many absolute reality, Chitta and Cetasikas and Rupa, in order to understand the different levels of it.
And when we learn about Virya developing with understanding, and when it develops with understanding that is Satipatthana, then it is an Indriya. But when we read about Indriya Pachya, then I believe any Virya can be Indriya Pachya. So we have to look at the intricacies very carefully to understand what is being referred to, like Virya as an enlightenment factor, different from Kusala Virya, just at moments of kindness or giving now, for example. So many different aspects of Virya in different contexts.
So we learn to understand moment with Viriya as Buddha taught. What moments do not have Viriya? How many Jeta does it have Viriya? And it's so ordinary because one learns to know that Viriya is almost any moment. And we cannot understand the moment when there is no Viriya, see? But when Viriya is there sometimes, Viriya to put on the shoe, when it's hard to do, sometimes it's so fit or something like that. Very, very normal. But when it is Viriya, to understand the word of the truth, it's time to consider, reconsider, consider again and again. There can be moments of understanding Viriya, but not as kanti, when it's stronger than that. When something unpleasant is there, or pleasant is there, the kanti of that very moment can be known. Different from moment when we're trying to put on the shoe, because we are now trying to understand the truth. Consider carefully, not enough, more carefully, see. So they go together, different moments, but they are only Viriya Cetasika. Like attachment to the idea of self and attachment to which sensuous object.
And it's also, we have to understand about the other realities that arise together, because when we read about the definitions, for example, in the Abhidhamma about Kusala Virya or Akusala Virya, the definitions, the characteristics, the functions, all exactly the same. But
yes,
it can arise with Kusala or with Akusala, with wrong view or not with wrong view, with understanding or not with understanding. So it's not just enough to read about one term or one detail, and to understand how it can be Indriya Pachya at almost every moment. We have to consider more about its nature. But as you always say, the main point is the understanding that it's just a Dhamma that arises and falls away at almost every moment. Not anyone's effort, not anyone's patience, not anyone's lack of patience, like with the car accident incident or anything else, just a Dhamma that arises and falls away at different moments, Kusala way or Akusala way.
and
Different
the
kinds of
understanding, the Viriya, all are accumulated to condition
yes.
more understanding. Otherwise, there cannot be more understanding if there is no accumulation of understanding right now. By the way it is, one by one.
And it's right now.
One moment is very different from the other moment. So what about one person is so different to the others? And all gone, but the accumulation are there, developing little by little to realize the truth of what is there when time comes. More understanding, stage by stage. So remember that any reality can be known at any time, at moment of anger, at moment of irritation, at moment of clinging, at any moment of feeling. What is there? One by one can be known, little by little, as not self, as it's only that which experiences. Because even the reality which experiences is not easy to understand the truth at that very moment, that it, not I, it experience. For example, seeing right now. That's why we talk a lot, many times about it, to understand it, at what level Panya is there, understanding it, developing little by little. Anytime we talk about it, it can be conditioned to attend to the characteristic. And when there is more understanding, it can be directly understood of that what very moment with direct awareness. Without direct awareness, there cannot be the moment of understand that which is there right now. So very natural. Hardness, softness, seeing, thinking, all are there in very short moment and then gone. It keeps on, go on and on by conditions. So it's a natural. What is that? Depending on conditions, to develop the understanding little by little, unknowingly, because of awareness, no matter it's directly or not directly. So now it's not the direct awareness, but there must be sati at moment of understanding from hearing and considering.
Yes, and zeta, different accumulations of patience. So for one, there may be no patience at times with the grandchildren or the household chores or the mundane chores, but patience to listen to the Dhamma, patience to understand the truth. But for someone else, maybe accumulations to have a lot of patience to look after babies, to clean, to shop, to do the work, but no patience to listen even for a few moments about the truth in life. So different accumulations, and it changes from time to time too, but all anatta, just different conditioned realities. And the patience to listen to the truth, to understand what is real, what is true at this moment, is the most precious kind of patience of all. Patience not to follow the wrong path, to try to select an object, to follow a technique and get into more and more trouble. It's patience to just let understanding develop naturally by itself, no matter the circumstances, no matter how life goes. Very, very precious.
In one of the talks a couple of weeks ago, there seemed to be a lot of discussion on meditation, people's various ways of meditating. But over the weekend, I was listening to some of the people talk, and they're very much believers of God, whichever God you choose. There was different lots have a different God, but I felt. I was thinking then of the Brahmajala Sutta that describes all of the different sorts of wrong view and how the belief in God comes about. And I find it quite overwhelming. You know, sometimes I try and talk with the people and to say, look, I don't actually believe in a God, you know, but there's blank looks. Then it's almost like they pity me for not believing, having a God belief. So it's and I think on Saturday there was a bit of discussion about talking the Dhamma to people who are not interested. And I think Achan, you said, just don't even bother. It can cause a gusala if you're trying to teach to someone who's not at all interested. So yes, I give up, and but I sometimes feel or wish they would give up and stop talking about their God beliefs. However, again, a different situation. I want it to be this way. It's not. So, you know, I can see why attachment, lopa, is the second noble truth, because it's there so much of the time when you hear, you know, even listening to Dhamma, wanting to understand more, wondering, why don't I know that much about Wirya, blah, blah, blah. So, but these discussions have been so wonderful. It is a great blessing to have access to them. So thank you, one and all.
Can you begin with the question such as what is true now? Or is there this very moment and what the moment is?
I think that is a good way to start, Ajahn, because I remember asking you like a few years ago, how is the best way to start? And I do that, but sometimes it doesn't go most of the time that conversation doesn't go anywhere, because I feel like people don't quite understand what is it at this moment. They're busy thinking about I don't know what goes on, but it doesn't seem like that conversation. Sometimes with the children, I've had answers, you know, what is real now, and I've touched something. Is that hard? Yes, that's hard. That's what I can feel. But with adults,
That's what you try to do, but they are not interested. So we have to understand what interest for them, what are they interested in. We talk about just the interest of the other people. Otherwise, it's one's own interest to try to help, but they do not want that way. They just want what they are interested. That's why I find out whether what is their interest. And it's the way to, when time comes, talking about the truth, what is there. But it's your intention, it's your interest, but not their interest. So they don't mind, they don't want to hear what you are interested, what's your interest, but they just want to have their own interest.
Correct. Mm. So then in most cases, I usually just drop the subject, because I don't feel skilled enough to take it any further. Or maybe there's not enough wirya to take it any further.
It's your own interest again.
Yes. Yes. Yes, that's true. That's yes, Achan, that is true. Mm.
And Buddha didn't teach to the people who were not interested in what he would say at all, like those who do not believe in the truth. They have their own idea, their own theory.
Mm. Yes.
So help those who are interested to understand the truth, the absolute truth too, not just the truth that it's me, it's his, or it's him.
Yes, thank you, Achan. That's good advice. I think it's a case of also being patient to listen to what, if I start to talk of the Buddhist teachings, to see if they're interested. If not interested, then just leave it, perhaps.
And actually, the teachings of the Buddha concerns the truth of whatever is there. So it depends on whether you would like to understand the absolute truth of life, of the moment, of what is there. Otherwise, it's useless. Even in Thailand, it's exactly the same. Anywhere, any world.
Yes, Achan.
And what is there at that very moment? See, not known what were there. Feeling, sanya, sankhara, vijnana, not known. No matter we're talking about the truth, the point is to understand what is there now, which is taken for me or I. Otherwise, it's just like telling the others what about the understanding of oneself at that very moment. And I think that we call it Buddhism or the teaching of the Buddha, but in truth, it's the teaching about the absolute truth, enlightened by the Buddha. It's so very subtle that no one can know it by oneself at all. What is there now is conditioned by the long time in the past, eons and eons. So how can it be known? Because all those moments were moments of ignorance and attachment and all other realities from day to day, moment to moment, life to life.
Yeah, that's another good point, Achan, that it's the words of the Buddha, but he spoke of the truth of what is. So that's a good emphasis on the truth, not so much the Buddha himself, because there is no Buddha. There's just the wisdom and the compassion and metta. But the truth is the truth no matter what, as you've often said, no matter where we are, what we're doing, the truth is the truth. It's just all the attachments and aversions and other jeta seekers that arise, which are real anyway. So, very, very precious to hear this truth.
And another way of thinking of it, Azita, is that it's about what can be directly known, not what is to be believed or assumed. So again, when in your discussions, and I'm impressed that you do have discussions with people who are voicing their beliefs, because it doesn't happen to me in daily life, but so there must be some gravamen to your discussions, but one can point out the difference between directly knowing something and believing something that one has been told. And a belief of that sort can never be known to be true or correct, can it?
That's
So
right.
what's the point in believing, holding a belief that may not be correct?
Yes, yes.
So one can talk in general terms like this without presenting it as being Buddhism, because it is something that can be meaningful to help the other person to question what they believe.
I'm thinking of one person in particular, a lady who's very strongly Christian, and she was saying, you know, that when they die, they will have this wonderful life in heaven with the Lord. And it distressed me a little bit to think that's such a strong belief that this was what's going to happen when she dies. But for her, this is her strong belief, and it keeps her happy. And so I'm reluctant, because of her strong belief in that. I'm reluctant to sort of, not that I will, but maybe I'm reluctant to shatter her dream or whatever. So yeah, and I also think with people who do have strong beliefs like that, then it then possibly becomes a little bit of a debate, and I don't want to go there. But as you said, pointing out not the Buddha's words, but the truth. What is the truth of the present moment? That's always a good one to come back to. Yeah. So thank you.
Very difficult when someone holds strong beliefs like that, though, that one could describe as extreme and just pure belief.
Yes.
Nothing based on any experience.
Yes. Well, there's other family members like that, but yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
I think we all have family members who hold other beliefs, and it's very difficult to have a meaningful discussion with them, in my experience.
I think with the one I can approach is being aware of what you say about people. Look, with this family member discussing, you know, just be kind to people. Don't criticize. If I start to criticize, she'll just wiggle a finger at me or something. So I find that really helpful. So, you know, we do go in that direction in discussions, but that's about all. But I find it beneficial. They're good reminders.
You mean being judgmental about other people?
Other people, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I also found that what John said on Saturday is something that was also helpful when John said that we think about saying something that is helpful to the other person instead of trying to say what one wants to say. I find that very, very helpful, really.
Thinking of their needs rather than our needs at that time, not just I want to talk about Dhamma, but what would be helpful, what would they like to hear about? And sometimes it's surprising, a friend who used to listen to us and join our discussions, but then stopped listening. But then he came up to me at the weekend and he said, oh, I want to talk to you about relationships. How's the best way to conduct relationships? And I said a little bit generally about being kind and understanding rather than clinging and thinking of oneself and love and so on. And he said, no, 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 more than that. I want to hear more about no people there, no one in the relationship. So then we started, so then I said, okay, we think of Jonathan and I, or you and your family members, or you and your partner and the relationship, but actually it's just the fantasy, because they're just the moments of thinking, the moments of seeing, the moments of hearing, moments of kindness, moments of meanness, different realities. And he said, that's it, and wanted to, so we actually had quite a long discussion and agreed we'd meet for breakfast and discuss more. So just because someone doesn't seem to respond doesn't mean they're not considering what they've heard and reflecting on it. And we never know when someone may come back and have the interest to hear more, but it has to be their own time and their own interest.
Yeah, that's a good point, Sarah. Not rushing in and, you know, wanting them to understand straight away, but in their own time. That's a really, yeah, that's a good point.
And another friend who also used to listen, I had a brief chat with him this morning. He said, oh, now he's just meditating and sending prayers to those in Ukraine. And so he didn't want to join any discussion. So then we talked a little bit. I said, oh, you know, how about when one's so agitated about the news, and what about now? What about at this moment? And so one can just bring it round a little bit when talking about general topics like Ukraine, bring it back to what about at this moment? What's the reality now when one's thinking and being so disturbed? Helping as one can, but when one can't help, what about the understanding? So one doesn't have to call it Buddhism, or one doesn't have to say it's different. One doesn't have to say, no, don't meditate or don't do this. But there can be little pointers that one can just add into conversations that may be helpful.
Your mention, Azita, of the family member who talks about being reunited with his or her partner in heaven after death reminds me of the time when my mother was passing away. I flew down from Hong Kong and arrived at the bedside in the hospice where she was, and my brothers were there, and one of them was saying just exactly all that sort of thing to my mother. I mean, she was only semi-conscious, but he was encouraging her to think of the fact that she'd be reunited with her husband who passed away some years earlier. I mean, what can one do in that situation? You can't start having a debate about. So I just let it go and made some other comments to my mother, totally unrelated to that, but about kusala done in the past and good life lived and that sort of thing. Just had to let it go. All the wrong view.
Well, yes, it made me think about those death moments, you know, the jittas before, juti jitta. Even if people are trying to be a condition for the person, the dying person, to have happy thoughts. Well, happiness, it could be just a great bit of lopa in that last jhana that's still not going to get a good rebirth. So, yeah, totally uncontrollable. As is now, right now, uncontrollable. There was another thing that came up on, I didn't hear all of the discussion on Saturday, but Ajahn, you were talking a little bit about the 8 worldly conditions. And so could we say that those 8 worldly conditions, at least one of them is around all of the time. I mean, you know, one of them is happiness, sadness. So could you talk a little bit more on the 8 worldly conditions, please?
What is there at any moment? Is that what we are saying about it? World, the way it is, right? Happiness, sorrow, for example, gain and loss, for example, they're all there. But we don't know that it's only the way it is by condition. That's why we think a lot about everything, even what is that, even it's there now, pleasant or unpleasant, happiness or sorrow, gain or loss. See, for example, now,
Yes, now. Yes, especially the happiness,
that's not a
sadness one.
fear, so we just think about it. But can you change the way it is? Or can you change the world?
No way, Ajahn, no way.
And what does it mean? No way.
It means we cannot, because there's no we. They're just realities arising by conditions, and then they fall away.
So is it firm, the understanding of no one, no world, when nothing arises at all? So we begin to think more, consider more about the truth of whatever we are thinking about. For example, are we now living alone?
Yes.
Otherwise, there cannot be the understanding of the absolute truth, friends, these and things around. But are we living alone? Do we live alone? Does one live alone? Alone at moment of seeing, no one there at all. Alone at moment of hearing, no one hears together with that which hears at all. So understanding the absolute truth of actually, we think about many things, many people, and many worlds too, but actually just live alone when at moment of seeing, no one there. At moment of thinking, it's a thinking which lives with the idea of many things, but actually only the moment of thinking is there. Think a lot about so many things. So what is the absolute truth? To understand the moment of living alone. Is it not true?
It must be true, Ajahn.
To let go about stories, so much about the events, about Ukraine and many, many things. If that does not arise, can there be the idea of this and that and Ukraine and on? So actually, even living alone is only just in a moment. And then the next one is not the last one, never be the same one at all. And this is the truth of life. So in truth, is that anyone or anything or any story? And to understand the 6 worlds, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, only that we take for many worlds, many events, many things, but actually only in a moment. So in truth, is the I. When there's no I, can there be my niece, my family, my friend, my country, and so on? The truth is the truth. And if the truth is not known, it has to be just like that, on and on and on, endlessly, as long as there are conditions for the moment to arise, to be such and such. That's why learning to understand little by little about the truth of life, of whatever is there as a reality, can begin to understand the truth of the whole world and all lives, no matter past or future. Otherwise, it's ignorance, again, about this and that. That's why we talk about the absolute truth, to consider that the truth is so very, very true. It cannot be changed at all, but it depends on the moment of understanding it, or just no understanding of it and takes it as usual as things and people. So no matter what story we are thinking about, there can be the understanding of that very moment in a moment as it is, to understand the truth which is hidden quite long, long time and never been opened up at all, when there's no understanding of the truth from the words of truth, from the enlightenment. So no matter now, just live alone in truth. And if we forget this, we just follow many stories on and on, never come back to this very moment at all. That actually now no one, only a moment of realities conditioned to arise and then falls away instantly all the time. With this firm understanding of this, there can be the understanding of what we're talking about, no matter it is virya or kanti or seeing or fame or loss, anything. That's why the understanding of no one has to be the understanding of that characteristic, which is its own as it is conditioned to be, not mine at all. So it's now. We can talk about anything, about the nature of it, about the truth of it, in order to understand the actual moment as no one. If we don't know what it is, what character is there, there can be always the idea of something. But seeing now sees, seeing sees. And what is meant by experiencing an object. Because if there is no reality which can experience anything at all, nothing can be known, can be seen, can be thought about. So the answer for everything is the understanding of the absolute truth of reality as it is, like pointlessness. It's real at that moment, so that it's worth to explain, to make it known as what it is. And we have learned about the truth, no one, and that is a hindrance of the 5 hindrances. And what is it? Tinamita. See, we learn about this word, but when it's there, no understanding of its characteristic. Just take it for I at that very moment. Pointless. See, but actually, that reality is so real, and as much as we can use any word to understand it as it's different from the other thing, is Tina and Mita. See, so all the teachings of the Buddha is the teaching of the truth of whatever is there to be studied. Otherwise, it's the story again about many things, but what about now? Otherwise, they cannot be the beginning of studying the characteristic which experiences an object, the chief of experiences, that it just see what does it mean, as it cannot hear, it cannot think. It is the moment, the reality, which which experiences that object. So the object can be known about the pale pink or the very sour taste, or what is there as it is. To develop the understanding, not I, but it's there developing because of more understanding of the wise word, of the true words about it, to be understood, to gradually wearing away the idea, the strong, very strong idea of self, unknowingly, because it's so strong, it arises very subtle and more to be known when time comes by conditions. So anything we have doubt about it, come back to the nature, whether it experiences or it does not experience. Only that. And then gone. No one can do anything because actually they are absolute realities, not as anyone at all. And we can come back to understand the truth of it at any time when there are words about it to be known, to be considered, to be considered carefully, more carefully, little more carefully. Otherwise, there's no way for it to develop, to be stronger, keener, sharper, to understand even at moment of any situation. Washing the car, walking in the park, eating very delicious food. And when there's doubt, we can understand that Buddha had taught about it, like the pointlessness. When it's known, it conditions the understanding to the truth little by little.
So, Ajahn, I think I'm beginning to understand a little bit of how it works. Like what you were just saying, the present moment, it's here for a very short time, gone, never to arise again. And if there's more and more understanding of that, then I can sort of see why attachment is slowly eradicated, ever so slowly, because instead of being attached to stuff that's gone, there's knowing that it does go, and therefore maybe the attachment doesn't arise as much or as strongly. Perhaps it arises a lot, but maybe it doesn't arise so strongly that you cling on, that there's the clinging on to events that have gone. And it just does seem rather pointless to hang on to something that doesn't exist anymore. So I can sort of understand how the teachings work, but no, I'm not going to say but. It's just more clinging.
Otherwise, how can there be more understanding of that very moment? As we said, no one, no thing. And it's wrong if anyone thinks that I'll try not to be like that. Again, instead of having understanding, it's moment of clinging to the I can do. So I'll try, see? But actually it depends so subtle that it's the right understanding only which can condition the manners of life after more understanding is there, patience is there, and metta, being friendly and kind, is there at that very moment instead of anger, see, by conditions. Anyone that cannot do anything because actually there's no one, but each reality is conditioned to arise to perform its function. Next time, the situation might be different from what you said. Even it's more than the dirty water.
Yes, it could be anything.
Always unexpectedly. Until this moment is unexpectedly arisen by conditions. Closer to this moment, no matter what it is.
See, we don't, well, I speak to there's so much of the day just goes by. There's no thinking of this present moment arose because of conditions. It's always me in this moment about to do something or have just done something, so, or not even knowing. So there's a lot of ignorance and attachment in a day, so much.
Is it true?
It's very true.
That is Panya which knows the truth. So whatever would come further on are conditioned by what that is the understanding now. By different manners, more patience, kindness, compassion, than getting angry or aversion because of understanding. And it conditioned the development of parami. So panya is the chief. Without panya, it cannot be parami, the end of akusala. One day later. Is that the point?
Yes, also, like with impatience, impatience, I would think, would be just dosa. I don't know if there's a Jetasika called impatience, because it usually arises with unpleasant feelings. So I'm taking it that impatience with someone, other drivers, grandchildren, whatever, it's an unpleasant feeling. So it's got to be just dosa, I imagine.
So what is moment of being impatient?
Well, that's what I said. I think it's dosa.
At moment of dosa, at moment of loba, at moment of ignorance, at moment of all akusala, no patience to be wholesome, to understand the truth. Because at moment of understanding, right understanding, it's not anger, it's not attachment, it's not impatient. So at any moment of irritation or anger or dislike, it means that there's no patience to be wholesome or to understand the truth.
Right, maybe I'm thinking of the conventional version of patience, impatience.
So we have to find out what is moment of being impatient. At moment of anger, right? Or at moment of wholesomeness. So the teachings of the Buddha is to understand the truth. And right understanding is there, which can understand. Impatient cannot understand.
No, impatience cannot understand.
And at moment of liking something, is there any patient?
Well, no. When we're speaking in terms of the truth, no. There's no patience when there's liking something.
And even in the conventional sense, there can be impatience due to attachment. For example, not waiting to just, for example, eating one's food before the other people are sitting at the table, sort of thing. So there can be impatience conditioned by attachment, as well as the kind you're thinking of, where one gets impatient in the sense of getting cross with someone, not having the forbearance to put up with the other person's behavior. And as Ajahn says, at any moment when it's the consciousness is a kusala, then there has to be lack of patience, because true patience is kusala, a kind of kusala.
Yes. All good reminders, because, you know, what I take for impatience is a number of moments. You know, I'm impatient because so-and-so did this. Yeah, they're very good reminders to be brought back. It's so, I don't know, so precious just to be brought back every time in these discussions, to be brought back to this very moment that is and is gone, and then is and gone. It's very, very important. A blessing.
And just getting back to the worldly conditions, I think it can be said that in some form or other, they are, the present moment could be seen as one or other of the 8 worldly conditions. I mean, if not at every moment, then most of the day at any rate. And in the sutta where he talks about the worldly conditions, the Buddha contrasts the reaction of the uninstructed person to the noble disciple. And he says that when an instructed noble disciple meets with gain, he reflects thus: this gain that I have met is impermanent, suffering, and subject to change. I think that's the point that you were making when you said it goes away. Continuing, he thus understands it as it really is. And then he goes on, and the same with all the other 7 Lokadhammas. And then he continues, gain does not obsess his mind, and loss does not obsess his mind. He is not attracted to gain or repelled by loss. Having thus discarded attraction and repulsion, he is freed from birth. And of course, for the uninstructed person, it's the opposite. So it's the worldly conditions are not specifically realities that have a characteristic, but there is a kind of understanding that they are the way things are, as Ajahn said, by conditions. But those conditions will not mean that those conditions are going to change by nature. And one just is not either obsessed by the positive or repulsed by the negative worldly conditions. Sees them as they really are.
You, yes, seems like far away from my present existence.
For all of us. But the important thing is one can't change the worldly conditions. They will change in their own good time, but it is pointless to try and change or do something about the gain and the loss. That they are bound. They are an inextricable part of life in samsara.
Just another funny little story, very briefly. I was talking to some neighbours, and we were talking about the floods in southeast Queensland, North New South Wales, and the war in Ukraine. And one of them said, "Oh, well, at least we're not getting COVID on the news anymore." So I thought it was worldly conditions. I thought it was quite funny.
Hear you, Sarah.
Ajahn, you were talking about the pointlessness and how when people think about the pointlessness of this or that, actually it's usually referring to Tina Mida, which is very interesting, akusala kinds of thinking with Tina and Mida. And of course, there can be the wholesome thinking about, oh, seeing, it arises, it's just the object of attachment and it's gone and it's of no consequence at all. So it all depends on the different kinds of cheetahs that are thinking about pointlessness. But it's a very interesting point that usually when people refer to, oh, how pointless life is, they may think it's some kind of wise consideration, but usually it's just thinking with akusala cheetahs, usually with Tina and Mida. So that's a very interesting point.
Could you elaborate more about the role of Tina Mida in this case?
So because, I'm just hearing what Ajahn was repeating, and it took me a little while to follow, but as I understand, usually Tina and Mida arise with the thinking with lobha or dosa that's weak, that's prompted. So it's prompted by certain kind of thinking, for example. So when one's just thinking about, oh, whatever arises in life now is pointless or meaningless, one may think that it's some kind of wise consideration, but actually usually it's just some kind of thinking with dosa or thinking with a attachment with a kind of laziness for kusala. There's no kusala at those moments. It's not actually the wise consideration. There's no kindness or no generosity or understanding. One's actually thinking of oneself in a lazy kind of way. So that's how I understood what was being referred to. But Ajahn may have anything more to add.
Sorry, something wrong. So, would you like to repeat again?
You've mentioned several times today about pointlessness, thinking of pointlessness. And I think this came from something that was said by, maybe it was by Maeve in the Saturday discussion. And often when people refer to pointlessness, they may think that it's some kind of wise reflection about dharmas that arise and pass away. But often, I think your point was often it's Tina and Mida are there. It's because there's not kindness, there's not generosity, there's not understanding. There is just weak moments of thinking with attachment or dosa, and there's laziness for kusala at those moments. But I don't know if there was anything else you had in mind.
But is that right, what I said about it? I don't know whether word right. I don't.
I think it's a very interesting point to consider, but I think that it's true that when we think about people think about the pointlessness of life or pointlessness of samsara, it's different from the understanding about how seeing now arises as the object of attachment and falls away. Those are moments of understanding. When it's just thinking how pointless everything is, I think it's an interesting point that it's actually just thinking with some kind of clinging to self or some dosa, and tina and mita are there. So I think it's a good point to consider. Different chittas at different moments.
That's why when it's there, what is it? We have heard about the nivarana, and one of it is dinamita. It's such like that, which is pointless. So it's a reality for sure, but what is it? What reality is it? Them are tina mita, and what are they?
I think there are different, in answer to your question, what reality is it, Ajahn? I think there are different meanings of pointlessness in this context, and I'm not sure which one Maeve had in mind, but pointlessness can be a kind of feeling of hopelessness, or it can refer to the way one sees things. For example, the image that comes to my mind is the hamster running on the wheel, expending a lot of energy and just getting nowhere. It's not leading to anything. And I think that's possibly one of the meaning of the.
So what about when you say dinamita?
I think that when we refer to tina and mita, it's referring to just a kind of laziness of the chitta, lazy for kusala. So the moment of clinging now, following the story, is like too lazy to have any wise reflection. So the akusala virya is there, the tina mita is there, no conditions for any wise reflection at all. So it's the weak, the sasankarika chittas that are too lazy for understanding at this very moment.
So dina is a reality and mida is reality. They arise together at moment of what we say pointless.
Pointless, yes. Yes, I think that's very interesting.
Otherwise, we cannot understand what is there. So it's I again. But when it's the understanding of that very moment, no matter what word we use, it's the characteristic of that very reality. And Buddha taught about dina and mita. So we begin to understand rather than try to find out when is it and what is it. But when it's there, what is it? It has to be as dina and mita to be found. It's there.
It's like even now during discussion, there are moments of listening and considering wisely, and moments like can't be bothered or pointless. Then tina and mita is there at those moments. So very common.
But it's not known. That's why Buddha pointed out too what are there at any time, whether it is Tinamita or it is Loba or whatever is there. The truth is that, but it cannot be known without the teachings of the Buddha about the absolute truth. When it shows up, no need to use any word for it, because its characteristic appears to be understood as it is, not the other. So it's time to understand now, not forget about when it's dinamita and what is dinamita. Otherwise, what is there? What is there? keep on thinking about it. But the characteristic of it cannot be changed at all. It's that at that very moment, to be known as it is, a reality, a hindrance to the progress of understanding.
So maybe that's why sometimes Tinamida is translated as boredom.
It doesn't matter as long it does not show up. How can we know by the word? But when it's there, no word, because it appears as it is. And we know that it's not at the moment. And that moment Buddha said about it as dina and mita because of its characteristics, no matter in kusala or akusala. It can be a moment of dina mita.
Usually we say,
It's not done. One factor is dina mita.
usually we say that with regard to the understanding, development of the path, the only hindrances, the only obstacles are ignorance and wrong understanding. Other factors like even the Tinamita can be understood. So, but now you are mentioning that it is a hindrance to the development of understanding.
Because how many chittas arise with dhinamitta? See, even akusala can arise with dhinamitta. At moment, yes, please.
Well, they have to arise with akusala. They can only arise with akusala.
So at moment trying to fall asleep, agitated and so on, they are hindrance to moment of understanding. Until Panya is strong enough, it can be known as no one and no thing. And at that moment of understanding, it's not dhinamitta. So begin to understand what Buddha said in daily life when it's there, appearing.
We can say in that regard that, well, any akusala is a hindrance because at those moments there's no understanding, but when it appears, when it is understood, then of course they no longer arise and they are conditioned by way of aramana for the understanding.
And there are 8 kusala, mahakusala, kama vajra kusala. What about the 8? Asankharika and sasankharika. And dhinamitta arises with sankharika.
But not with the kusala sasankarika, only with the akusala sasankarika citas, the loba and dosa mula citas.
The 8 kind of mahakusala or kama vajra. What is the first and the second?
The 8 mahakusala citas with, they have to be the one with pleasant feeling, the one with neutral feeling, the one that is sasankarika, the one that is asankarika, the one with panya, the one without panya, but no tina and mida with the mahakusala citas because they can only arise with loba and dosa mula citas.
We have to consider carefully, otherwise we might think that dhinamitta arises with kusala. Why cannot it arise with kusala? Because it is a kusala citasika. So when we talk about this kusala sankhara, there cannot be dhinamitta with it. So it's the very weak kind of kusala. It's not as strong as asankharika. But there's no dhinamitta when it is kusala.
Only with the sasankarika, the weak loba and dosa mulacitas. So it's only the pointless in the akusala sense when it's pointless right now. So with loba or dosa, only then can it be with tina and mida. Not the wholesome moments or wise considering about the pointlessness of seeing arising and it falling away again and again, life after life.
If we don't think or consider carefully, there can be wrong of dinamita, thinking that when it is kusala sasankarika, that is dinamita. But actually, dinamita can be kusala at all.
Correct.
So Tinamida cannot arise with chitta, with moha.
No, because they're not sasankarika or asankarika, only with the loba mulacitas or the dosa mulacitas that are sasankarika, weaker ones.
So it can arise also with wrong view, sasankarika, wrong view.
Yes, the attachment with wrong view, that is sasankarika, is accompanied by tina mida. So it can be with or without wrong view. So 4 types of loba mulacitta: with wrong view, without wrong view, with pleasant feeling or neutral feeling, but only with sasankarika.
And what about dosa?
And with the kind of dosa that is sasankarika.
As much as one can understand from hearing, considering pariyatti, is to understand the difference between each moment of citta, kusala or akusala. Otherwise, one's own idea cannot be right when there's not more considering the truth on and on and on.
I think the point also of understanding about when they arise and appreciating it is to really understand it is even now, at moments now, even during a discussion, very so common during the day, completely unknown, usually just different dhammas arising by conditions, different mental factors, or anatta, not someone who is lazy or someone who has this kind of attachment or this kind of aversion, but just different dhammas that arise for a moment and fall away instantly whilst thinking about the dhamma or whilst thinking of other topics.
And why
Anytime.
can't it be known when it's there?
It can if understanding is developed to
Right.
understand the nature when it appears.
Mm-hmm. So the most important thing is to understand, no matter what, as whether it is the reality which experiences or the reality which cannot experience. Otherwise, without understanding its nature, there must be clinging to that by different manners.
I think the important point is also the not expecting, no expectations, not trying to find it, not trying to look for it, because that is a real hindrance.
And that is the function of right understanding only. And it's the way to understand that even right understanding is not me, it's just a reality. This can be accumulated as factors of understanding more about that which appears later, little by little. When there's no understanding of pointlessness and it's there, that can be conditioned for doubt, trying to understand it. But when there's understanding, even it's there, it's known as just a reality, different from the other, that's all. And without the understanding now, it's impossible to understand that when it appears, stage by stage. That's why without the intellectual understanding, there's no condition to understand directly the truth of what is there now.
I notice we're running out of time, but I have a question on asankarika and sasankarika. It's in the dictionary, it's prompted or unprompted. But when I think about, if for example, there's an act of kindness and it can just be come really quickly, or it might come when you think, oh, I should be kind to this person, but then that becomes a concept. So how in reality is sankarika and asankarika citta to be known, if possible?
Even now or then, would you like to know about it or to understand the nature of it as not self?
Oh, well, I guess I should say the second one, Achan, really, yes, the second one, to know that these jittas and jitasikas are not self. I think that's the most important thing.
And then there's no doubt about the characteristic of that reality, that it cannot be anything else at all, no matter what word is used for it.
Yes, 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 of course. Thank you, Achan.
Like with regard to your granddaughter, there may be a little bit of kindness and patience, or a lot of kindness or patience, or no kindness or patience, or maybe someone else is kind and it's a reminder. But anyway, it's just different degrees of kusala, different moments of thinking, each one conditioned. So I think they're just pointing to the different degrees of kusala or akusala. The weak or the stronger lobha, the weak or the stronger kusala.
Well, certainly the feeling of being tipped with dirty water was very quick to be angry and give her a little whack. So I guess that was totally unprompted. Who knows?
And it's just for a moment, so different moments.
No matter
Okay, thank you. Please continue, Ajahn.
No matter what word is used, it's just to develop the understanding of the reality which appears, but not to try to pinpoint what is the word for it or what word is there for it. But it's a moment of understanding the truth. And there can be a little more understanding, but how difficult or how hard to know whether it is strong or weak with dinamita or without dinamita. because it just would explain that very reality. But when it's not there, it cannot be known. But when it's there, the point is that to understand the truth as just a reality. And Panya is there, whether it can know more or less about it. Naturally, anatta, not with intention or expectation, to understand better and more firm about the understanding of the truth of anattanness.
Okay, I think that's a good point to finish. Thank you very much, Ajahn, everyone. So